This probably flows on quite well from the previous presentation because a fair bit of what we talk about will be stat sports driven, and then I will contest some of the points potentially, but tie into how performance is probably more contextual. So I thought I'd just do a quick overview because I don't know many people in the room. So my background's actually education. So I started in South Australia as a PE teacher for 8 years. Towards the end of those, I was running sport for probably 800 kids in a country town. And towards the end of that, I started working at the South Australian Institute of Sport and almost enjoyed that more than my actual job in education. So I quit, handed a resignation in and moved to the other side of the world. Lucky mum was born here, so I could get a British passport. And yeah, I just tried to work in sport. So for the students in here, just keep knocking on the door. Don't take rejection, because I got turned down by 35 clubs as an unpaid intern. That's ranging from League 2 down to Conference North and South. And I ended up getting one at Stevenage. When I was there, I just kept using my days off to go and learn and get experience at different clubs. And eventually I got approached by Bristol City, moved there, and then when the new ownership took over at Ipswich, I came across with Mark Ashton, like the CEO and the new ownership group. So I really do strongly encourage you to keep doing that, and probably my advice that I can take away from my journey so far is the relationships will be just as important, if not more important, than what you learn academically. I think that's probably really important. So just a few personal beliefs to begin with. I think football is an individual sport, a team sport played by individuals. And I think that probably ties into what Alex was saying. Like, there isn't just this loading pattern that is this magic number that you can put out, because every position will be different. And you need to work with your S&C departments, your sports science guys, your physios, your coaches, to actually really tie that back in to get some sort of loading blueprint. And my third potentially contentious one is football in the UK is ingrained in tradition. Everyone just wants to do the same thing over and over. No one really wants to change. Now you'll see clubs like Brentford are forcing everyone to look at what they do and how do we actually do this. So maybe that's the Australian in me, but that's my opinion. So there's so many different processes that you can actually use data for. So we use it for benchmarking players. So within our club, as you get higher in the pyramid, you can get access to every club's data, like physically, through camera systems and things like that. So we'll start making like league benchmarks and different things in those points. But we have KPIs for each age group as we come through. We know we have to hit certain like physical standards using like our VAD technology at under 14s, under 16s, under 18s to get to where we need to in the first team. We also have this whole area of injury prevention. I work across some recruitment data as well. The focus of this presentation though is merely going to be a focus on our training analysis, like a very brief snippet of that. And then using that to translate into match analysis of a particular player and looking at trends in data. So I think data is just the beginning. I think that this quote is quite good. Like, the goal is actually to turn data into some sort of information. And then from that point, information into insight. We as a club, and Nikos would know this working at the club, we collect so much data. We just have access to so much data. But if we don't have that in some sort of information form and present it to coaching staff in a way, it's not insightful, it's just numbers on a page. And I think that really addresses probably what we're gonna go through today. So the three categories that I'm going to talk about today are prediction, intensity, and optimization. So prediction is a model that we use for our advanced planning using like the drill databases that were highlighted before. And I like to think that's proactive load management. We're looking at intensity. This worst case scenario in a game. How can that be replicated in some sort of training scenario? And then optimization is the individualization of the previous two. As I said before, it's a team sport played by individuals. The loading pattern kind of has to be that way. So this is the prediction model that I've built at Ipswich and that we use. Now, this is not 100% accurate. I don't think you will find one that's going to be 100% accurate. There's going to be errors in it. There'll be things that change from the planning phase to what actually happens, but it will minimize the error. And I think that's probably what we're really trying to do with data in general, just get as close as we can to a more accurate answer. So we get a sheet from the coaches in the morning. That sheet will then come back into our office and we'll load up what the drills are going to be and the timings down here, and then it populates from that. So if we look at like the box sprints, for example, there's basically 3 teams. As the ball goes in, 2 run from 1, and that kind of flow happens. It's like a small rondo 6v2. So we know as a squad, we'll get approximately 411 meters total distance, 17 zone 5, which will be pretty much the transitions, no zone 6, and the accels, decels will be about 9 each. Now from that, we accumulate the session. And I'll just draw your attention to the top box. I know there's a lot of color on there, but just the top box for now. So this is like our predictive output, if you like. So the top box here is for that session, which was on the previous slide, is going to be 70 minutes. These are the distance outputs, zone 5 running, zone 6 running, and our accels, decels. Now from that, this is our team match average that we would get throughout the season. They have to play at least 80 minutes for it to actually start going into this. So if they come off at 60, that won't affect the match outputs. And from that, we populate a percentage of match. So just looking at it, what kind of session would this be? What kind of spacing are we thinking?
So like a sprinting sort of session.
What, sorry?
Sprinting session.
Sprinting session. So this is our sprint distance. This is our percentage.
I was looking at more the accelerations.
Yeah, the accelerations. So it will be a small space session. They generally, if our sprint distance is low, the spaces aren't big enough for them to get up to that speed. But this will be a small space session. So generally our match day -4 will be something like this. So from that population, this left-hand side is the same graphic, and the right-hand side is what actually happened from the session. So with this, we were probably slightly under on our total distance, still in the ballpark. Our high-speed running and sprint distance was fairly accurate. Accels and decels are, again, fairly accurate. As I said, this isn't going to tell us exactly what's going to happen, because when you look, we planned 70, we did 80. So in that session somewhere, there's been an additional 10 minutes, so naturally your output will go higher. But by doing this, we roughly know what's going to happen at the end of the session, so we can plan our top-ups. As Alex pointed out, you can just run them box to box. But what technical benefit or tactical tie-in is that? If we know this is what's going to happen, and we know roughly we're going to get these numbers, we can go back to the technical coaches and kind of meet with them and say, okay, player A, B, and C need to do a little bit more work today. We can run them in this manner, or we can do this exercise with them, just doggy style running, or do you want to put a technical passing bit in or a pressing activity? And usually they will want the technical, but we're still hitting what we need for our loading patterns. But it's that collaboration between the technical coaches and ourselves. Just moving on to the intensity. So obviously I've taken the names off this, but each line of this is one player's maximal 5-minute output in a match. So, and then I've opened up a particular player here. So our highest output by any player that we've had over a 5-minute split is 959 metres of total distance, 127 metres of zone 5, 90 zone 6, and then these are the per minute values across that. Now, we try and prepare our players for this worst case scenario as best we can. Each week we'll try and adopt some sort of drill where they will have to do this, and it is an absolute physical blow. At the end of it, they are quite tired. Generally, this will happen on a big space day because we need the space to hit the numbers, and this is kind of how Bielsa created murder ball, because he couldn't get the numbers he wanted quick enough, and so he put balls around the outside of the pitch. When one ball goes out, you throw another ball in. Coaches will have balls all around. So if you're attacking one end, you've had a shot and it goes out, they'll just throw one. So the defensive has to transition, everyone goes back, and it is still positional because the centre-back might have to run from the halfway line to the 18-yard box, whereas your midfielders might be outside the 18-yard box and they have to actually get all the way back. So it still has that individualisation within it. But yeah, certain managers I've worked with probably like this drill more than others. I think they like seeing fatigue. So, and then the third one is the optimization. Again, lots and lots of colours. The reason I use colours is just because most people know green good, red bad. That's an easy way for coaches to interpret it. So each one of these lines going across will be a player. It's grouped into positions. We will generally call ours wing backs, not fullbacks. If you are Ipswich Town followers or watchers, McKenna wants the ball. He leaves 2 behind the ball and everyone else goes. So kind of Leaf on one side, Harry on the other this year. They're more going forward, but they have to get back. But in line with what you're saying with fullback, their outputs compared to say 3 years ago are a lot higher. So we call them wing backs, even though probably if you ask Kieran, he would call them fullbacks. But on this, we know, and again, I don't have any studies to prove this, but we know there's this happy place somewhere between 220 and 260% of a game. We've gone to 280 because our players that don't always play, we know we can bump up a little bit higher. And that's for each metric. Now again, going back to this individualisation talk, because this is the percentage of a match, so this is their training total, and this is the percentage of a match as it builds and goes through, we know our centre-backs are going to run less. So this player here has run 27 and it's 286. You can come down here and a 24 and it's 220% because their match load is higher. So it's all individualised. And on this side, we're trying to hit that everyone hits green for the week, meaning they've hit 90% of their maximum speed. Again, going on to what Alex said, yeah, we know that's good for hamstring health. And obviously there will be some zeros in there if players are injured, etc. So we try and build this loading pattern. Our week starts on a Saturday, being the game, because if it's been a really difficult game, that'll change what we do on our Monday, Tuesday. And we build into Friday being the last day. So on the Friday, we want to be around this 260% or 220 to 260. Obviously, there's considerations for that. If it's a 2-game week, you're probably more going to focus on the recovery aspect because psychologically, they're going to be more fatigued and emotionally. So we obviously take those considerations into consideration. But if we're building in this manner from the Saturday through, we know on a Tuesday roughly what percentage players should be at going into Wednesday being our bigger space day. We can already pre-plan our top-ups. We can pre-plan maybe what drills we're going to do or how long for, so that when we meet the coaches, we can feed that information in. Again, the data's there, but unless you actually share it with some sort of information to provide the insight of evidence, it's meaningless. It's just numbers on a page. So just to review that, it's individualised. We consider the need of the individual player. We try and engage the technical coaching staff because it supports that interdepartmental planning. And then by doing that and engaging them in the process, it can actually become impactful. So our training data can be utilised. Moving on now into what we do with matches. So we obviously have the physical load, which Alex alluded to. We try and tie everything into technical as well. So there has to be some sort of technical tactical. And this ideally builds the relationship. With this, if we're looking at physical, I think the key question is like, how can we actually make an impact with that data? So Alex's point was, if you run more, you don't necessarily win. There is truth to that. But if you run more, what happens technically? Whether that's team or individual based. And then from that, what can we do with that? How can we get to the insight level? So from a physical point of view, and I didn't put the 268, was it? How many metrics? Yeah, so I didn't want to type that many, so I just typed a few. These are probably our key ones we look at, but there are 268 to choose from. What I want to do today is try and show you how I look at data and where I can get to in terms of the insight aspects. So today we're just going to look at physical data and compare it to match outcome. That's the focus. Is there a relationship between that physical data and the match outcome? Maybe, maybe not. And if so, what influences that? And Alex put 6 or 7 up today, and we're going to look at the positional profile, positional physical data. So this graphic here is broken into positions. So the key of the positions is up here. And on the left-hand side, we've got the total distance. So each column is total distance, and coming across is high-intensity distance. You will notice that our attacking midfielders and strikers, who are generally your biggest runners, are low for us. Has anyone been to an Ipswich match this year in here? Yep. What happens at somewhere between 60 and 65 minutes? We take our front 4 off. All 4 come off. We're lucky that we've got probably a high quality squad depth. So our striker will come off. Generally, Wes on the right will come off. Generally, Broadhead will come off. And then we introduce Harness, we introduce Jackson, we're blessed with that. And the 5 sub rule probably has helped us because of our squad depth in League One. So hopefully we can get over the line. But in this, there is a relationship between our centre backs and our attacking players. So our centre backs will run 26% higher in high intensity distance when we lose games. That shouldn't be that big a shock. When we win games, between our front 4, we're running somewhere between 15 and 20% more high intensity distance. So there is that relationship between our outputs and our results. If we break this down further into a per minute value, so this data here is when we win, this is when we when we draw, and this is when we lose. So I just want to focus on our attacking players because that's where we're gonna build from. So our strikers, when we win, which is generally like we kind of 2 per game because they're 10 counts, we will run 10.8 metres of high intensity distance per minute. Versus when we lose, those players run 7.4 metres high intensity distance. So that's a difference of 3.4 metres per minute, which works out to somewhere between probably 325 and 360, depending on how long the game is. So this kind of starts adding to that story of, well, maybe there is something between our attacking players and our match outcome. But again, to tie this in, we need the technical. So stat sports, in my personal opinion, is the gold standard. I mean, Alex can't come up and say that, but he basically said it, didn't he? They are like the gold standard, and for us, StatsBomb for technical metrics are the gold standard for us as well. So isolating the physical, look, the graphs we've just looked at, if I put them in front of a manager, they're just going to say, yeah, but it's context to the game. There's no real clarity or context to it, and it's a fair point. So we're going to now start looking through a technical lens. So it gives the context. Most importantly, it speaks the coach's language. That's what they care about. So we're building that relationship. And also, chances are players will respond better to a technical than a physical. Probably because they associate physical with hard work. So this is one of our strikers. This is his touches in the box for the year. So you can kind of see our different home and away. I've anomalised who it is. As the data goes up and down, this includes sub-appearances. So this is every appearance they've made. The reason I picked touches in the box is there's a strong correlation between goals scored and touches in the box. Most strikers will care about scoring goals. So how can we now utilise this to tell the story we're trying to tell? And I know I used per minute before, and you could use per minute for this, and it would show basically the same thing. So this now is the red column is the same player, zone 5 running. The green on top is their zone 6 running, so combined is their high intensity distance. The blue is their touches in the box, and the numbers are when they score goals. So by layering the data, we can actually start seeing a little bit of a trend happening here. So if I was speaking to the player or a coach about this, when you run at high intensity distance, you are getting generally more touches in the box. When you're generally getting more touches in the box, such as like these three, you are scoring goals. So if you run more at high intensity, you will score more goals at its crux. Now, a player can't control how many touches of the ball they get in the box because they could be open but not get given the ball. But they can control how much high intensity distance they run and how much effort they actually put in. Our particular focus, and the reason I used attacking players, is because it's not a 96-minute game for them. It's a 60-minute game because we bring them off most weeks at that time. So they can really run and run. And Kieran is probably quite demanding in that sense of our strikers putting that effort in. But when you sit down with coaches, they can understand, well, yeah, there is a significance between the high intensity distance and the amount of touches in the box. And there is, for the player more so, there's a correlation between the touches in the box and when they score. So they're going to kind of buy into that as well. So just kind of, again, to summarise, I think there's so many metrics. I think we said 268. StatsBomb have, I don't even know how many. Probably about the same, maybe double. They have everything. So all these combinations can come together. But what does that mean? So specifically, I think it's important to go, what do you actually want to analyse? So and then when you look at the outcome, what are you trying to find? And in terms of relatedness, do the metrics that you're picking, such as touches in the box or high intensity distance, actually relate to that outcome? Because if they don't, it's going to be probably a long hunt through data for you. As I said at the start, data is just the beginning. I think data leads to information. Once you analyse the information, you can provide insight. If that's not happening and we're not tying together, if we sit alone as a performance staff, we're not going to have the insights or the impact that we could have. It is really important. And I think from what I hear from other practitioners, other countries potentially do it better than us at the moment. But so we're obviously just trying to evolve and get better. I travelled to the United States last year, and I found over there in NFL, there's a huge intercollaboration. Like everything the performance guys do, the technical are involved in, and vice versa. And I think that's really where we need to go to improve in UK football. I think data is only as good as the user as well, the person using the data. So if you're not comfortable with data, I would suggest you probably try and get better at it, because that's probably the way the game's going. But at its crux, I actually think data is probably only as good as the question that the user is posing. Because if we're asking the wrong questions, not even data can save us at times. I've tried. But thank you for that. Thank you for your time.
So I will open the floor for any question. So get the opportunity to, especially for the local students, local guys, to ask to the head of performance system some questions. Also questions that we cannot answer maybe. Maybe in that case, no? But any question, please? Yes, Jordi.
Hi Andy,
Hello.
I'm Jordi from Spain. Thank you for your presentation, I really enjoyed it. In your experience, how many sessions or weeks or number of tasks would you need to get like a decent amount of data to try to predict or try to...
I think we started when we had done the drill only 2 or 3 times, because you have to start somewhere. But obviously the more data, the more times you do that drill, the more, I guess, accurate the data becomes. But yeah, you have to probably start somewhere. So we started, and then, probably 2 or 3 weeks, I think. So most sessions were done maybe somewhere between 2 to 4 times. We started predicting what was going to happen, and we were probably significantly less accurate than we are now. But now we've got, I think, about 18 months of doing like the same drills. And if spaces change by 4 or 5 meters, we'll change the drill. So it's a different drill. Generally, the manager will use, or the coaches will use, similar spaces repeatedly for the same drills. So it does make that easier. But yeah, I think you probably 2 or 3 weeks, and then it will get more accurate over time.
And also, I saw one of the tables you presented. It
Yep.
was like the weekly individual match day.
Yep.
Well, yeah, match day comparison.
Yep.
You had like 2 different legends.
Yep.
And I didn't understand. We had like the 80-90%.
Yeah, so the one on the right-hand side, this one, this one here is solely for this max speed column, because obviously we don't want every player to hit 260% of their max speed for the week, so this will be isolated. Everything from that way is the key on the left. The purpose of this is because throughout the week, somewhere between that Saturday through to the Friday, we want players to hit minimum 90% of their max speed for their hamstring health. So that runs on a separate system.
Would that be just one reach?
So it
reach one time?
it depends. So some will reach it on the Saturday in matches. It is unlikely that they will hit the over 90. Generally, they'll be high 80s. Then it will be deliberately run on a Wednesday for everyone. The players who don't play will run it after a match. So we'd probably get minimum 2 per week, above 90, but generally in drills in bigger spaces, you may get it as well. Crossing and finishing is probably one that gets quite close, depends on how big the run into the cross is, but yeah, that's probably one of our higher ones as well.
Would that be -3 or -?
That would be a -3, yeah, so our -2 is our low day, yep.
Thank you.
That's okay, pleasure.
Any other question from the audience? Kevin, please.
Thank you, Andy. That's fantastic. I just had a question around how you manage the conversations with coaches throughout the week. Collecting so much data, I'm assuming it's quite overwhelming to feel like you have to report so much. But from your personal experience, how have you evolved with those conversations? And is there any insight to us younger practitioners into how to tap into the coach's knowledge and get some buy-in on the data that you have?
Carefully is probably the best one. No, I think I'm selective. I think you need to be selective. If you've got 3, 4, 5 things, which happens probably most days you can go with, I think I like to probably almost put my education hat on a little bit and sit back and what can I actually have an impact with, or what's going to be the most impactful. I can't deliver 5 or 6 things because they'll probably switch off after one. So I'll just take the one that I think is the most paramount, or the one that I know that they will engage with or they can control. That's probably, probably my advice. I think earlier on in my career, I used to take everything and doors got closed quicker, and I didn't understand why. Now I more understand why, probably. And so, yeah, I think we're quite good at selecting what to take and when to take it. I think timing is everything as well. If you can catch coaches when they're casually sitting around having a tea or coffee just chatting, it's your best in. Or hand delivering the report, because they'll look at it, and rather than having 10 comments on it, I pretty much just have averages and maybe one comment, because it will start the conversation. Conversations are always better than words on a page, in my opinion. Yeah, that's okay.
Any other question? We have time for the last. Thank you.
Actually, the question open to the both last speaker.
Okay.
Both of them never mentioned maybe a collaboration with video analyst.
Yes.
For example, I'm speaking with you
Yep.
about football and with him about rugby.
Yeah.
You spoke about football, about the distance of the striker.
Yep.
But probably there is a massive difference between if the distance run was very effective for the action or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And for the rugby, I know that the Italian national team is trying to find a way to analyze the data of impact with video analysis to understand from which angle and calculate how strong is the impact, because with the GPS it's quite impossible now to understand how strong is the impact. So I wanted to understand from both if you try to collaborate with them in which way, and even with analysis system.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, it's harder at League One. So when I was at Bristol City, we'd get everyone's data split into in and out of possession, and you can kind of then start marrying. That's almost makes half the work straight away, and then you can start marrying it up with video analysts. If we want to know when they're hitting certain speeds or there's constant sprints, you can tie in to work out which way the player's actually running on that. Because obviously that ties into, are you actually just running because you're doing a recovery run and you should have intercepted the ball earlier, or is it you're running in behind? We do work with our video staff to do that kind of collaboration, that kind of work. But I believe it is a lot easier as you go higher. I don't think sport will ever get to a point of like Paul Bradley's work. I think it's amazing how he breaks it all down. But if I did a report on a match and gave that to a coach, that's going straight in the bin. No, it's not being looked at because it's too detailed. And I think kind of tying in Kevin's question as well, it's about teaming up with video analysts to get the one point that you want to get across and then delivering that, rather than both of you going in with multiple. Yep.
Question. I'm sorry.
Do you want to? Sorry.
Time for other questions, but probably a final consideration that merge a bit of all the comments is soft skills are very important when you are a sports scientist or a data analyst. You need to understand what information to pass. You also understand how to pass this information and when. So it's very complicated to try to transfer your knowledge, your information to the coaches and after influence training. But since you had probably more than one question, you can ask Alex and Andy something else outside when you finish at lunchtime. So I would like to thank Andy for the presentation. Thank you, Andy.
Pleasure.